Episode number 331, New Rhythms for a New Year in Ministry with John Shelton. Let's do it.
This is the definitive podcast for helping you plan, create, and execute dynamic worship experiences at your church. Useful, practical content in the areas of production, worship, communications, first impressions, and more. This is Making Sunday Happen.
Well, hey guys, Happy New Year. Welcome to 2022. We made it. I hope that you had a great Christmas with your family and got some much needed rest from your church. What? We need rest from our ministry? Why, yes, we do. Very much so. For some churches, it was a banner year. You saw a big comeback this past year, and with so much negative in the news, I wanted to share a few praises that you guys sent me celebrating last year, 2021. So check these out from Facebook and emails that I've gotten. Josh Brown in Indiana says his church was able to purchase and install a new PA system. Way to go, Josh. My friend Tom Bump sent in a praise that him and his church was able to celebrate God's faithfulness financially. And I know a lot of churches are in that state where God just really blessed them financially during this time. Some of you guys are still struggling, but God has been very faithful to you to keep the lights on, so to speak. So Tom also released his first book, so be sure to check that out. Great ministry. I'll have Tom on the podcast here in a few weeks to chat about burnout and things like that. So how to prevent burnout in your ministry, things like that. So Tom will be on the podcast in a few weeks. Many churches are getting through the last year or two financially, so it was great that Tom is seeing that in his church and celebrating that with others. Allison Denbaugh celebrating making it through seminary to be able to gain knowledge needed to serve others in ministry better. Way to go, Allison. Good job. Good hard work this past year. Well, lots of good is happening in church now. Let's be thankful and celebrate as we go into the new year. Let's go into the year with new excitement. To see life change happen in our churches, which is what it's all about, right, guys? It's at the end of the day, it's about seeing people meet Jesus and take their next step with Him. On this week's episode of the show, I welcome my good friend John Shelton. John served on staff with me at New Spring Church in South Carolina. We had a lot of fun together, and we've both since moved on to new adventures. I started 1230 Media in 2015, and John left to serve as a chaplain and as a minister to pastors, a shepherd to shepherds. Him and his wife Linda founded More 320 recently, which is a nonprofit ministry that serves ministry leaders with free counseling and support. John will share more about that here in the coming minutes, but he has been a great counsel to me and my family, and you're going to hear me get a little bit vulnerable in this episode with some past ministry struggles that I've had in my past, and John and I walk through experiences that we've both had and how to deal with them and still survive in our faith and in the ability to serve others. So very open and honest episode, and I hope that our openness and our honesty will be an encouragement to you if you might be struggling with some of the same things that John and I have seen in ministry. So hopefully it's not a Debbie Downer episode. Hopefully it's hitting you where you are, and maybe that you're going through some of the same struggles that we've been through, and you're not alone in it. All right, so we're going to dive right into that conversation with John Shelton right after this. Hey guys, I want to tell you a little bit more about my friends at churchbanners.com. We have 3 large displays for 1230 Media and 1230 Kids that we take to conferences with us. All 3 came from Church Banners. They are easy to assemble, easy to pack away. They look great. You can travel very easily with them. The whole process was really easy. Church Banners is your source for church banners, praise banners, and portable displays. From inside your sanctuary to outside in the church parking lot, they have a huge selection of church banner designs for you to personalize free of charge. I want you to check these guys out. Just go to churchbanners.com for more information, churchbanners.com. Hey guys, today I welcome my friend John Shelton. John and his wife Linda founded More 320, which is a ministry that helps shepherd pastors and leaders. Great friend of mine. John, welcome, man. Thanks for hanging out, dude.
Hey, thanks for having me, Carl. How are you, man?
Dude, I am awesome. If people don't know, we've had some ministry experience together in the past, and had a fun ride. But man, we haven't worked on staff together. Gosh, it's been 6 years, 7 years, something like that.
Yeah, probably 6 or 7 at least. Yeah.
Man, well, you've had probably a couple grandkids and less hair since.
True. and I went from 0 grandkids to 2 because our daughter had twins. So awesome. That's awesome. Yeah.
I know that you guys are enjoying that.
Oh, definitely.
All right. So get me into, I know. So we were both on staff at New Spring Church, and then I left and went to do 1230. And then you left and went to Standing Stone. Right. And so kind of walk me through that transition between that and Standing Stone and then More 320. Kind of catch me up.
Okay. Well, first off, just to get the timeline, I left staff and became a corporate chaplain.
That's right. Okay.
I did that for 3 years and then joined Standing Stone, Linda and myself, in 2018. So we've been doing this particular kind of ministry for almost 4 years. Last year, we decided that we wanted to do more than what we were doing because we want to create a place where pastors and their wives or ministry leaders and their spouses can go just for a time of rest and solitude. So we created a nonprofit, and we decided to call it More 320. More from the Ephesians 3:20. God can do immeasurably more than we can ask or imagine. That just made sense to us because we're always wondering what is the more that God is going to give us, or what's he going to do in our lives. And we want that for ministry leaders and their spouses, because we've been there 20 plus years of ministry and realized the struggles and the challenges of ministry and family. And it's not all bad, Carl. I don't want to paint a picture as every ministry is bad. I'm just saying there are those, though, that struggle, and we want to be a resource for them. Yeah.
So is it a place? Do you go and meet with pastors? Kind of tell me how it works. Okay.
So we meet with pastors wherever they want to meet. Right now, More 320 is what we do. What it's going to be is it's going to be More 320 Haven. So we're looking for land currently. We're looking for land that we could go and build a place where they could go to get away. Prayer cabins, tiny houses, walking trails, animals, garden, pond, just a place to relax, experience solitude and silence, and just a time of reflection. So, and make that a regular, kind of a routine part of your week as a ministry leader, not just it's not going to be a retreat center for crisis. It's going to be a place that's more proactive. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So with the chaplain, with Standing Stone, with More 320, walk me through, and you, both of you guys have been so generous to me and my wife, just to be a place that we can share struggles and things in ministry. Tell us, you interact with pastors. Kind of give me the specifics of if I might not necessarily be struggling, or I can be struggling in ministry. I can, through the weight of what ministry can bring, or even just somebody to talk to. Kind of walk me through the practical of what you guys provide.
So a lot of times we just do that by listening to what they want to talk about, listening to what's on their mind. And I'm not always a good listener, Carl, but when you are a good listener, you start to understand what they're really saying. And so sometimes they may be saying one thing, but you can tell that something else is going on. And so that's what happens a lot of times. Just in the past 6 months, I've dealt with 2 pastors in other states that were talking about their ministry, talking about the struggles of their church. And man, underlying all that was a marriage issue. And I was able to bring that out and give them some practical help and some practical tips for that. It's not always about marriage, but that's just an example. But sometimes we just ask questions like, when's the last time you took just a day off and went out by yourself and just listened to what the Lord had to say to you? You know, that to me, that's as practical as you can get. Just get away, turn everything off and get away for 4 hours, 2 hours. So we try to just give practical things that will help them understand, hey, maybe I'm going at too fast of a pace. Maybe I need to slow down. Maybe I need to check the rhythms in my life and the balance and what's going on in my life right now. And that typically comes out in a conversation.
So the last couple of years, especially, what are some of the hot topics that you guys have talked with pastors and leaders about?
So knowing that a lot of church leaders worked from home, there you go, working from home and being together, maybe not 24/7, but not really ever experiencing that before and not knowing what it's like to be at home a lot with your spouse and maybe with your kids. And your kids aren't in school, your spouse might not be working or may not work anyway. And then working through that. Okay, well, I don't have a home office or I don't have a place at home that I can go study. How am I going to work through that? I can't go to Starbucks. They're not open. I can't do that. So I think just these past couple of years, that's been a challenge. And then the other challenge would be, as far as pastors go, when are people going to come back to church? We lost people. When are people going to start giving like they were giving before? And so, I think that's probably two of the biggest. Not so much now working from home, because I think we're kind of moving away from that and people are back in the office. But I think originally that was a big deal. Figuring out that rhythm of being at home a lot and what that means to my family, what that means to my job and my marriage and whatnot.
So give me a temperature check of where do you think we are? Are pastors weary, fried out? Or are they becoming more energized now that kind of the pandemic is pretty much over in most states besides New York and California? Just kidding.
So I caught that there. So it's interesting. I just saw a recent survey from October, and it said that 51% of mainline denomination leaders have considered quitting.
Yeah.
You go back 3 years, I think that number was 32%. I'm not exactly sure of my numbers, but it's pretty close to that.
It's jumped almost 20%.
Yeah.
I believe it.
Yeah, because the challenge, it's just another thing that if you did go to seminary or you did get schooling for being a pastor or going into ministry, you weren't prepared. They don't give you a class in dealing with a pandemic in seminary. Yeah. And not all pastors go to seminary, and that's fine. It's not required, but that's just something else that you can't really prepare for. You can't prepare for people leaving your church. And then what is the hot topic? Well, it's mask or no mask, or it's vaccine or no vaccine. And, we don't have to get into all that right now, but that's valid. That's, people differ in their opinions. So they're going to go somewhere where their opinions are valued and treated. And so pastors are feeling that, saying things like, well, I thought we were friends.
Right.
I thought we were closer than that. I thought they valued my opinion more than that. And so I think that's a lot of it. But then just the fact of negotiating the whole pandemic and negotiating where we are in life and culture and politics and all these different things. It's just pressure that, your typical person just not capable of handling.
Yeah. And I think pastors have especially been put in a tough spot in that you're not going to please everybody. In fact, you're probably going to tick off half your congregation no matter what you decide.
Absolutely.
Is that the feeling that you're getting from from people?
Not necessarily, but I know that's been tradition, and that's been culture of church. I try not to get too much into that particular realm of conversation.
Yeah,
but it's that's
right. Yeah,
that's probably spot on.
So you alluded to this. You asked pastors about their marriage when you're talking to them. You ask them about their marriage more than their ministry.
Yeah.
But why is that? Give me your reasoning.
Well, because if your ministry succeeds and your marriage fails, you have failed as a pastor. Just plain and simple.
Yep.
You know, one of the first conversations that Linda and I had with a pastor and his wife was at a restaurant in Charlotte, and Linda looks across the table from the pastor and looks at him and says, "I don't care about your ministry. I'm concerned about your marriage." And it shocked him, to be honest, because he was the lead pastor. Well, sitting next to him was his wife, who was applauding. She was clapping. She was glad that that's the case. And so, that couple is still married, and he is out of ministry. Yeah, but they're still married, and that's the win in my book. And I believe in God's book. That's what He wants. He doesn't want our marriages to be torn apart because of ministry challenges. And it's happened over and over and over. And research, unfortunately, shows it too much.
Well, 50% in the church world too, a divorce rate, right?
Exactly.
I had a friend of mine that I was on staff with at the church before New Spring. So this is probably 10 years ago. We were on staff together, and I was talking to him about possibly working together and doing some things. And he just texted back and said, "Hey, I think I'm out. I'm going to put ministry in the rear view." And this is a solid guy. Yeah. I mean, incredible guy, ministry, talented. And it's just it's so sad to see just, on fire ministry people just frying out, weary, burnt, all that just kind of takes its toll. I think in our circles, ministry, health, and self-care, and I've even used those terms before. We've had several people on. Do you know David Olshan at CIU?
I don't.
At Columbia International University. I've had him on before to talk about self-care. He's like the head of the student ministry department at CIU. Oh. Anyway, those two terms, ministry, health, self-care, there's other words, they're kind of buzzwords. But and they have been buzzwords for a while, but things really haven't changed that terribly much, have they?
It doesn't feel like it. I haven't done the research, but it just doesn't feel, I happen to be a part of a church that seems to be very healthy as far as staff. But I think overall that might be an anomaly, just because it's valued so much, and what leadership in a church, what they emphasize will be seen as valued by the staff members and the spouses of the staff members. So if a leadership doesn't value that idea of caring for yourself and mental health and staff health, then it's just not going to happen, because it's just like anything else. If you're not intentional about it, it's not going to happen on its own. And unfortunately, we still have a culture of go, 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 busy, 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 busy. And some people use their busyness as a badge of honor. Right. And it should be, Carl, it should be frowned upon in all aspects of society, but it's not, unfortunately.
Yeah. In fact, I kind of cringe when somebody says, "Hey, I know that you're busy, but like,"
yeah.
Well, because I want people to, hey, I'm going to take the time to spend with you. Like, don't, but we have this stigma of, if there's movement, if people see us doing things, "Oh, you must be busy. You don't have time for me," or, whatever, which, I don't know how to break the stigma of that. Do you?
I don't, because you have time for what you make time for, and that's unfortunate. Sometimes, in what we do, people will say that to us. "I know y'all are busy." I said, "No, we're not busy. we're here to serve you as a pastor.
Yeah.
And so we're not busy. We will drop things.
Yeah.
We won't drop date night or we won't drop nights or times that are just us, but we will drop things, to serve pastors. And sometimes pastors do that too much. And that's where the burnout comes, and compassion fatigue and things like that cause unhealthy habits and unhealthy attitudes. Right.
Yeah. So how does that translate to boundaries? So for instance, if I'm going to have that stigma of, hey, I'll drop stuff because I'm ministering to you, on the flip side of that could be my wife at home going, you don't need to be dropping us. Like, I needed you home. Well, I needed to minister to XYZ. I needed to stay over 2 hours because so-and-so was. How do you handle that conflict?
Well, it's different for us in what we do, because we actually work from home, and I'm not on staff at a church, and we have a different kind of schedule. But you have to put your schedule out as one of your priorities. If I have something on the calendar that involves me and my wife or me and the family, and somebody calls and needs that time from me, they're going to have to wait.
Yeah.
And I was reading something earlier that said an empty calendar looks like a joy, but it's actually a trap because you start believing that you have time for everything. So a full calendar, even if you plan time away, like let's say I have on my calendar is 2 hours by the lake by myself with my Bible and my headphones. That's, my calendar's full, but that's an important part of what my calendar is for, is so I can plan those times and be intentional with my time, be intentional with my wife's time. We have things on the calendar for each other, and that's important. So, it's a lifestyle, Carl. It's not, it's not easily fixed. It's habitual. Being in ministry, you get this idea that you can fix everybody sometimes, or you can help everybody, and you can't. It's not possible. So if you can get that out of your head, then you start thinking, okay, it's like the oxygen mask on an airplane. You've probably heard this analogy. The best thing I can do is put my oxygen mask on first before I try to help anybody else, because I need to be healthy before I can help anybody else.
Would you take that a step further and say my oxygen mask, my family's oxygen mask, and then you?
Absolutely. I love that, because again, if you fail with your family, you have failed. So make sure my family is getting the oxygen that they need as well.
Yeah. So you alluded to working from home earlier. So let's get back to that for a second. So tell me the difference in working from home and working at home. Is there a difference, and which approach is better?
Yeah, I think so. The pandemic showed us that a lot of people can work from home. The problem is there becomes that element of working at home as well. So when you're supposed to be home, you're supposed to be involved with your family, you're still working. That's what I would call working at home. And there might be a book in here somewhere. I don't know, but working from home says, I've got this. I need to do this. It's time. At 5 o'clock, I'm done. Working at home says, oh, so-and-so called at 7 o'clock. I'm eating dinner, but I need to take this phone call. That's working at home. And again, the pandemic really showed us that we can, a lot of our society can work from home. And even those that used to before the pandemic, it's when you have 45 to 50 hours at work, and then you come home and add 10 to 15 during the week. That's working at home. That's not healthy.
Right. So what are some good practices that we can put in place to make sure that we're healthy working at home?
Well, if we're working from home, then clock in and clock out. I know that sounds silly, but clock in and clock out. Schedule a 15-minute break schedule your lunchtime, schedule things, make sure that you don't just let the day happen to you at home, because if you let the day happen to you, then it's going to be 7:30 or 8 and you're not going to be done, and you're going to feel guilty because you haven't finished what you're supposed to finish. So treat your home like you were at the office, right. Clock in, clock out, go outside and walk around. And if you need to make some phone calls, make them outside, get some fresh air, get your blood flowing, but try to avoid the television, try to avoid Facebook,
right.
because those are things that steal our time. Now, Facebook and television aren't bad in and of themselves, but they have become habits and have become addictions. So I would just say, hey, schedule it. Treat it like you're at work. Clock in, clock out. Hey, my lunch is 11:30 to 12:15. And I may sit and watch an episode of The Office, or whatever. So I think that's practical enough that it would help if you think that way. But if you let the day just happen, it helps to have a home office or a place, maybe a desk. Some people don't have that. But maybe you can use a kitchen table. I don't know. And I know it's harder with small children. Mm-hmm. But it's, you figure it out.
Yeah.
You figure it out. And sometimes the kids need to know, hey, right now Dad's at work. I know I'm here present, but I'm at work, and I have a break in 35 minutes. And in that minute, we're going to go take a walk together, or we're going to go wrestle on the, living room floor,
mm-hmm.
Something to that nature.
Yeah.
And your kids need to see that. They need to see that discipline.
Yeah. Good. Well, overarching, why do you think, we talked about frying out and burning out. Why do you think that leaders are frying out? Like we've seen, obviously we've seen moral failures lately, more of them, but not just that. We talked about guys quitting ministry, kind of cold turkey, moving to the secular space. Like my friend, he's going to go off and like completely out of ministry. Why do you think that is? Why are we, and we've alluded to some of that, but why do you think we're frying out?
I think it's unhealthy work habits, unhealthy ministry habits, being available to people 24/7. That's not healthy. Working 24/7, feeling like you're on the job 24/7. And, as a pastor, there's that feeling of these people need me, but they don't need you unhealthy. And right. So the best thing you can do for some people is say, I can't do that. Or no, the ability to say no is probably a spiritual gift. Mm. It's not listed in 1 Corinthians, but it probably is, because when you say no, then you're taking a step towards health. And I don't believe we say no well enough as ministry leaders, and we take on too much. And we feel like that we are God, or we are Jesus. We are the salvation, people's salvation. And that's not what we were created for. We were created to have fellowship with the Lord. And so I just think it's unhealthy habits, and lack of accountability, people holding you to those healthier habits.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you about the rise and fall of the Mars Hill podcast. Have you listened to it?
I have. So
this one's very, and I haven't really talked about this publicly that much, but I'm mixed feelings on it, because I have some good friends who were on staff at Mars Hill. And so, I know that the story can lean a little bit negative. But also too, I can resonate with the experiences of some of the people that their stories were told. So my dad's a pastor, has been, and then I've worked at several big churches. One in particular, years and years ago, just a tough ministry experience. And so I think with this podcast, no matter how you feel about it, I do think, I want to get your thoughts on this. I do think that it has opened a can of worms of discussion of maybe some of the dirty part of ministry, for lack of a better word, or abuse that's happened in the church behind the scenes, that sort of thing. So what's your thoughts on that?
I kind of share your thoughts. I think it has opened this Pandora's box, so to speak, or can of worms, and it's shown some people maybe some behind the curtain, in ministry. But one of the questions I've wondered listening to that, it's been about 4 to 6 weeks ago that I finished it. The people that are listening to it, I don't know that many of them might be shocked if, and so, it is, yes, it is. It's human nature. We in ministry are human, and yes, we are held to a higher standard, but we do make mistakes. And I think when people realize that, they realize that there's a human element to being a pastor and being a wife of a pastor or a spouse of a pastor. So I was a little, it broke my heart to listen to it. I have my opinions about how well it was done, and in the spirit of, in the, what I'm talking about, the spirit in it was given. But I think it did help people maybe see, hey, God can do some great things in spite of leaders that abuse their power. And I think that's key.
There's so much there that's interesting to talk about. Like one of the aspects that might resonate with me and you both is, with large churches especially, sometimes there can be a reputation or there can be a stigma of, and even when you're in a situation where there's a fall, like Driscoll and Mars Hill, I know friends that saw ministry happen in a very real way. And me and you personally have seen some incredible life change happen in situations that me and you have been in together. And so there's this weird mix of both that things can be happening, but two things can be true at once. Do you feel that?
Yes, I do. In fact, Carl, my home church, and I won't say the name of it, but my home church growing up was listed in one of Tom Rainer's books called Breakout Churches. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but the church was listed in that because of what it had done and how much it had grown. And all the while, the pastor was abusing his leadership and ended up getting asked to leave. And so, yes, I've experienced it more than once, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But the dichotomy of God working and man sinning blows me away.
Yeah.
It blows me away because God says, you know what? I don't need you, but man, if you will let me use you, this can be the most incredible thing you've ever been a part of.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of leaders say yes to letting God use them, and then they get sidetracked with a bad habit, a bad relationship, a sin addiction, or a sin habit, and the next thing you know, they're out of ministry, and God used them at one time.
Right.
And he can use them again.
Right.
That's the key. He can use them again because he has enough grace for our sin.
Right.
It's not, we can out sin, what he has grace for. So, which is crazy to me. It's crazy that somebody would go through what they go through and then still God chooses to use them.
Right.
But man, I'm grateful for that.
Yeah,
so
me too.
It hurt. It hurt though to listen to that podcast. I'll just say that again.
Yeah, I agree. Let me ask you this flat out. Do you think that spiritual abuse, because I think people are dealing with this. I've dealt with it personally. Is spiritual abuse real in the church?
It absolutely is. It absolutely is, because as a pastor, you are seen as an authority in one, just in God's word, But a lot of times you're seen as an authority in God's will, because that's probably one of the most popular questions that ever get asked to a pastor is, how do you know what God's will from your life is? And when you speak into that as a pastor, you've automatically created this authority in their life that they will never let go of until you fall or until you hurt them. And then they'll push you aside and they'll go look for somebody else. And that somebody else may not be involved in church. It may not be a church setting. They may get out of church, but they're going to go find an authority in their life who can speak into them. And so spiritual abuse, yes, very, very real. Long answer to a short question, but yeah.
Now, how do you feel about this? How do I discern if my leader, if I'm feeling spiritual abuse, if I think that's happening to me, how do I discern between just a one-time mistake from someone? Like if my leader says something that just really dings me, is that just a one-time, he just had a mistake, just being a jerk that one time? Or how do I discern that between a constant, frequent jerk, like spiritual abuse? How do I determine if I'm being abused or if it's, you follow me?
Yeah, I do. And that's hard. That's hard because a lot of times you don't want to talk to anybody else about it because you feel
can't.
Or you can't. Yeah. You feel like it would be wrong, or you feel like you would be ostracized. And so, discernment comes from the Holy Spirit. So I think that's your answer. You just ask the Holy Spirit to give you the discernment that you need to determine what needs to be determined. And then you listen to the voice of the Holy Spirit, regardless of what that leader says. You listen to the Holy Spirit, and I believe that when we ask him, he'll give us what we need.
I have a theory on this, and I could be wrong. This might be oversimplifying it, but I think, yeah, please do. If I go to my leader and I confront him in some way, and there is a genuine apology, like a seeking of forgiveness, I think that sometimes is a tale of, okay, just one-time mistake. But if it's unapologetic, well, don't you love Jesus? Or some type of Jesus card or leadership card, or aren't you following what your authority of the church, or whatever the line might be? That's a tell for me, or has been in the past. Is that resonating or making any sense?
Yeah, I think that could be accurate. I wouldn't say it's probably 100%, but I
agreed.
I think that's a definite way to judge for sure.
Because I think that I'm wondering if it's almost like the frog in the crock pot, right? Like, do I know at the time I'm being spiritually abused?
Right.
Why would I stay years in the same situation and not get out? I'm wondering if it's like I didn't realize myself until years later. Oh, in fact, the podcast actually kind of put some words to it for me. Like, oh, spiritual abuse. That's an interesting term.
Well, and I would venture to say that you were probably spiritually abused by a narcissist. So they didn't come out as an abuser, but over time, you trusted them in a way because they put that into you. And so you follow me? I mean, it's kind of like, the frog in the boiling water is the perfect example. Yeah. He didn't realize it when the water is, getting warmer. He just, happy go lucky.
Right.
Then one day, boom, he's done.
So the reason I bring this up and a little vulnerable is because I think that other people are dealing with this and don't know how to get, maybe they don't know that they are in a situation that they need to get out of, or don't know how to cope in the situation, or have been desensitized, or like what's the pathway to healing or out?
I think it's counseling, professional counseling. I think because that is a path where, first off, it's safe, and you're going to be in a confidential setting, and you can get somebody who's been maybe trained in that type of behavior. And so I think maybe that's the answer is professional counseling for sure.
And that's what I love what you guys provide, because it's not associated with the church. For instance, if I'm struggling in a church setting, and especially my wife, like, we can't really go to our small group necessarily because we're in the same just hypothetical. We're in the same small group as the pastor's wife, or the small group pastor who's best friends with the executive pastor, or
right.
whatever the case may be. So it's hard to, what am I going to say? I have an unspoken, like what,
right.
It's hard to share. So I think that you guys not being associated with the church, I'm not on staff with you, so I don't have that weirdness.
Right.
It's anonymous. So I can come to you guys and just share, and it's not, so I really love the service that you provide to the church.
Exactly. And, that's why we do it, Carl, is because everybody needs a place where they can speak honestly, openly, vulnerable, and confidentially. Yeah. They have to be able to tell somebody, hey, this is how I feel, and not be judged for it, or not be demoted for it, or not be fired for it, or not be criticized for it, or any of the other words you want to use.
You bring up a great point, because I think that sometimes from the stage, maybe I'm bringing too much experience to this and being a little too honest, but sometimes from the stage, I think that pastors, and let's say it's a staff meeting. Hey, we just want to create a culture where you feel safe to come to the pastors and share. But I think in my experience and the experience of other ministry folks that I've seen, when you do that, they don't necessarily mean that. Because if you do that, then you're done. Yeah. Or could be. And so I don't want to sound like I'm bashing the church, man. We're for the church. I mean, look, I love the church. Our whole ministry is for, both of us. So I don't want to come across like I'm bashing the church. I do want to have an open and honest conversation about some of the struggles, because it's very real.
Yes. And, we deal with a lot of pastors that maybe there's only 2 or 3 people on staff as well. And so that develops a whole different, ball of wax, because, they're having elder issues. The pastor, who's he going to talk to? Yeah. It's not always a sin issue. It's hey, what should I do? I have an elder whose wife is doing this, or I have an elder who's doing this. What should I do? I've never experienced that before, or, had a guy just ask about building advice, he didn't know who to ask. We're considering buying a building. Do you think it's a good idea? Right. And I assured him I'm not a real estate guru, but I just helped him, hey, let's do some pros and cons, and so what we do offer is, I just think, and I have it for myself too. I have somebody I can talk to, and that it feels good. It feels good. We all need it.
As far as your ministry, how much does it cost? Give me costs.
So there is no costs, because we have people that believe in what we do so much that they give to our ministry on a monthly basis. And that's our salary. That's how we survive. Every once in a while, somebody will give a big gift, and that helps with ministry expenses. We took a couple out to coffee yesterday, a ministry couple, and it was a blessing to get to buy their coffee. I know that sounds simple, but I'm sure to them is a blessing. Yeah. And so that's how we are funded. Everything runs through the nonprofit, and then we receive a salary from the nonprofit. My wife was the executive director of More 320, and I would be the director of ministry. So those two positions get a salary.
How do I reach out to you guys if I'm in that situation or need somebody to talk to? How do I find you?
So our website is themore320.com. And you can go to themore320.com contact and fill out that contact form. And that comes to our email. And it's, again, totally confidential. But that's it. themore320.com/contact.
Nice. Well, last question for you. What are some books, if I want to go after this on my own first, what are some books that you would recommend?
So I'm reading one right now, Carl, called The Rest of God. It says Restoring Your Soul by Restoring Sabbath. And it's good because there's some practical, but also some biblical stuff that just says, hey, this is not just a good idea. This God commanded this. This is something that God wants us to have. That author is Mark Buchanan. I'd never heard of him before, but I'm going to look up more. John Ortberg has a book called The Me I Want to Be, and it's been great. I think Linda is reading that right now. He also wrote a great one, Soul Keeping. And then I read one in one of my classes called The Center of the Cyclone by Bruce Epperly, just talking about the cyclone the ministry being a cyclone. And hey, sometimes you just got to be smack in the middle of it. And, a hurricane, the eye of the hurricane is the most calm, but in ministry, you are rarely in the eye of the hurricane. You're usually on the fastest track, the highest wind speed, whatever. But yeah, those are some great books. Yeah. I got a bunch here right at my desk. Foundations of Spiritual Formation. That's a great one. That's by a guy named Pettit. I can't think of his first name. And then, of course, The Emotionally Healthy Leader by Scazzaro. That's a great book. So yeah, those are just a few. There's a lot. Carey Nieuwhof has some great books. Yeah. He just sent me a free one today. At Your Best: How to Get Time, Energy, and Priorities Working in Your Favor. So I just sent him a little tweet and said, thanks for the book.
Yeah. Nice. Well, send us out here, man. Give us an encouragement. I hate that. I hope this hasn't been a Debbie Downer episode, but I do think that people are need this. They, especially for the new year, how to find a new rhythm and just how to take care of ourselves and our marriages and our families and our own spiritual walk. So give us some encouragement as we close today.
Yeah. So I was reading the other day, just kind of preparing for this, and read something that just hit me in a really cool way. And I think you'll appreciate this. So if you're a fan of the not Lord of the Rings, the Chronicles of Narnia, Prince Caspian, the kids were looking for Aslan, and we all know that Aslan is a symbol of God. And so the Lucy was looking for Aslan and couldn't find him. Well, I think the other kids had gone to sleep. And so Lucy went looking for Aslan on her own, and she found him. And she said to him, she said, "You're bigger." And he said, "No," he said, "You've grown. And when you grow, I grow." And that hit me in such a way that when we as believers, when we as ministry leaders, as pastors, as people involved in ministry, when we grow, God grows for us too. God just gets bigger and bigger the more we grow. And man, that was just encouraging to me, because yes, I know Hebrews 13 says God's the same today, yesterday, and forever, but our perception can change. And so when we grow spiritually, emotionally, physically, and the ways mentally that we need to grow for ministry, when we grow, our view of God is going to grow. And that, to me, that's a good word. Yeah, or it was for me. Good. I may be the only one, but it was really a good word for me. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I love you, brother. Thank you so much for what you do.
I love it. Appreciate your friendship, man.
Thank you, buddy. All right. The more320.com to check it out. themore320.com. John, thanks, man.
Hey, thank you, Carl. Talk to you later, man.
When presenting lyrics on screen, simple is the way to go. That's why I suggest limiting your lines of text on screen. I prefer 2 lines of text, whether you're using full screen lyrics or lower thirds. For full screen lyrics, you can maybe get away with 3 or 4 lines depending on how you lay it out, but never, ever, ever go over 4 lines of text. For lower thirds, 2 lines of text is the way to go. So, 2 lines of lyrics, if you can, but I'll forgive you if you fudge a little bit on full screens. Keep things real simple. Limit your lines of lyrics.
The show notes for this episode are available now at makingsundayhappen.com.
Well, guys, thanks so much for hanging out with me and John Shelton this week. If you heard something in this episode that really hits home with you and that you're really struggling with, you need someone to talk to, John and Linda are great resources for you. Again, their website is themore320.com. themore320.com. Well, next week on the show, I'm going to welcome Nick McElveen. Nick is the product owner of video and sound effects at Soundstripe, and we're going to be talking about how to craft your video and audio projects using stock sound effects and music and video. And this is not a long commercial for Soundstripe. That's not what you're going to hear next week. This is practical information on how to search Soundstripe and other stock resource sites, how to put together your project using stock resources and more. I think you're going to have a blast learning from Nick next week. Well, go out there and create some amazing worship experiences this weekend. I'll catch you next week.
Making Sunday Happen is a production of the ministry of 1230 Media. For show notes, archive episodes, and more free resources for your church, visit makingsundayhappen.com.